it's Jessie. Welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to another video. Today, as you can probably see here, we are going to be going through every single book I read in 2023. And I'm basically going to be trying to keep it as concise as possible and tell you whether I would recommend it to you, and then maybe give like a one-sentence review, if that. So trying not to like spend hours and hours here because there's obviously a lot of books. I'm going to run through them all month by month, but firstly let's get into some stats. I'll leave kind of a timestamp below if you're not interested in that, but yeah, let's just get straight into my 2023 wrap up. So firstly, let's do my stats on Storygraph because I feel like they are often more accurate. So I'm going to do my little Storygraph wrap up, which I have already looked through, but I will go through it again with you now. I'll move over to the side slightly so we can actually see. So I read 163 books this year and 54,246 pages. Obviously that's not entirely accurate because like different editions have different lengths. I'm going to try really hard this year to like get the exact precise edition I'm reading on here so it can log it accurately. First book, true crime story. Last book, In the Lives of Puppets. So you can see kind of a mood map of my reading here. Dark books in January, I guess, because I read a lot of thriller but then also romance. It kind of balances out to the middle. It seems pretty standard, I guess. Most of my stories were a steady pace, and you can see here the books and pages I read per month. Towards the end of the year I was definitely reading a lot more books than the start of the year, and that's why I've kind of set my Goodreads goal a little bit higher. It's 164 books this year, one more than I read last year, but I do want to read longer books as well, so a bit more reading this year, but I think I can definitely do it. I met my goal, and my genres were mainly contemporary, romance, thriller, mystery, young adult. Very happy with that, and I think maybe next year I'm gonna hope for maybe a tiny, I don't think I'll have more than 20 non-fiction books actually, so I won't say non-fiction in that. Maybe more fantasy. I'd like to see fantasy on that list potentially. Maybe horror too, we'll see. My longest book on here, it's saying Illuminate, 599 pages. Shortest was File Number 2, which is like a in-between book by Sylvain Neuvel. That was 10 pages. My average length of book was 327 pages, and it took me around 10 days to finish each book. I don't think that's accurate because certain books I would pick up and then I'd log it on my Storygraph and then I'd put it down and I wouldn't pick it up for another 6 months. So I think a couple of those are like really distorting it. Normally it takes me, I'd say, 3 to 4 days to finish a book. So my least time spent with the book was Twisted Love, 1 day, and most time was 159 days with Regime. So yeah, it wasn't like it was actually taking me 59 days to get through the book. I know I've had like Men Who Hate Women on there, like on my currently reading for like a year, so that might skew the results. So I'm going to try and stop doing that, stop starting books and then putting them down so it can be a bit more accurate next year. Authors I spent the most time with was Grady Hendrix. I think I discovered him for the first time in January, so yeah, I read almost all of his backlist this year, 6 books. Tahira Mafi, Shatter Me series, not surprising, and then I read the entirety of the Giver series as well this year, which is why Lois Lowry's there. My average rating was 3.72, which I'm super happy about. I wanted it to be a bit higher than last year. I believe it was about 3.5 or 6, so I'm really happy with this. I think for next year I'm going to aim for 3.8, 3.9 maybe. There's no way we're getting up to 4, but maybe a 3.8 would be a nice goal. And then this is how my ratings fell. Overall, I'm very, very happy with this. I don't know why I've got 72.5s. I seem to love to give out that as a rating. But yeah, I'm glad that everything is mainly over 3.5. That's super exciting to see, and I think really good because it shows that I'm liking the books I'm reading, obviously. And I think maybe it will even be higher next year because I'm planning on DNFing more, so that would bode well. My best month was September, where I had an average rating of 4.08. Yeah, I think I read like If We Were Villains and Babel this month, so yeah, definitely some really solid reads there. And then June was an average rating of a 3.3, which is pretty low, but I don't think I read all that much in June. So my most shelved book was ACOTAR, and my least shelved book was The Only Girl Living on Earth, which is like a little scribed short story. My highest rating was The Tea Dragon Tapestry. That makes sense to me because it's like a graphic novel, that's the word. 105 new authors, that's fun, and 70 books were part of a series. No rereads this year, and 2 DNFs. So that is pretty much everything I read, I believe, in terms of those stats, which is super fun. Then I'm going to go through my Goodreads stats super quickly, although it's going to be pretty much the same, I think. So on here it's saying 53,810 pages, and on here my longest book's apparently Magnolia Parks. Average length is 330. Again, average rating is 3.7. Highest rated is The Last Devil to Die, and then yeah, it's pretty much similar stuff saying on here, nothing too crazy. That is my little stats, just a quick one, and yeah, I think let's get straight into me going through every single book I read this year and whether I would recommend them or not. I hope you enjoy. Starting off with January, I had True Crime Story by Joseph Knox. This was a 5-star. Absolutely recommend. I loved this. Thursday Murder Club. This was a 4-star, but absolutely adore it. The rest of the series is incredible. One of my favourite series. Absolutely recommend. Rock Paper Scissors. I initially gave this a 5-star, but it's now like a 4.5. I do enjoy it. I definitely think it's a good thriller, so I probably would recommend, but like if you've read tons of thrillers, maybe not. Final Girl Support Group. Absolutely adored. 5 stars. Definitely recommend. Weasels in the Attic was very disappointing for me. This is a short story collection. I gave this a 2.75. Would not recommend this one. And Daisy Darker by Alice Feeney, also not very good. I gave this one a 3-star, but probably wouldn't recommend. So then for electronic books, I guess, I read Twisted Love by Anna Huang. I gave this 2.5. Definitely would not recommend. I did not enjoy this. I read How to Kill Your Family by Bella Mackie. Again, didn't enjoy this one. This was a 2.25. Would not recommend. I read Twisted Games by Anna Huang. A bit better than Twisted Love, but still wouldn't recommend. I gave this one a 2.5. I read Killjoy by Holly Jackson, which is the novella prequel to Good Girls Guide to Murder. This is fine. If you like the series, I would recommend, but it's definitely not like essential reading. I gave this a 3.75. I read The Black Flamingo by Dean Atta. I really enjoyed this one. It's all told in verse, which was really fun. I gave this a 4.5. Definitely would recommend. So then for February, I think I'm just going to do it in the order that I read them now. I'm getting too confused, kind of jumping around. But firstly, I read All Good People Here by Ashley Flowers. Would not recommend. This is a not very good mystery book. I gave this a 2.5. Then I read Final Offer by Lauren Asher, the third in the Dreamland Billionaires series. 4.25. I did like this. A bit too long, but overall a decent romance. I do quite like this trope, like childhood friends to strangers to lovers. Quite a solid one. The It Girl by Ruth Ware. This was a pretty average thriller. I gave this a 3.5. Probably wouldn't recommend over others, but like if it intrigues you, go for it. Said Nudes by Sarah Sams. This was a fun short story collection, though I can't remember any of it. I probably would recommend. I gave it 4 stars, but like very forgettable clearly. Reckless Girls by Rachel Hawkins. This was a very average, if not slightly below average thriller. I gave this a 2.5. No, would not recommend. Killers of a Certain Age by Deanna Raybourn. I absolutely adored this one. 4.5. Definitely recommend. Redeemed by Lauren Asher. 2.5. This is the last book in the Dirty Air series and was very slow, very boring for me. I did not enjoy. Sadie by Courtney Summers. This is very well loved, but it just didn't really hit for me in the way that I wanted to. I gave this a 3 stars. I probably would recommend because a lot of people love it, but it wasn't for me personally. And finally, we have The Man Who Died Twice by Richard Osmond, the second best in the series in my opinion. Love this one. Definitely recommend all the Thursday Murder Club books. Then we move on to March. I read Note to Self by Connor Franta. This is just like not the time for it anymore. Like it's definitely a 2016 type of book. I gave this a 2.5. Probably wouldn't recommend. Pizza Girl by Jean Kyung Fraser. I did enjoy it. I gave this a 4 stars. Quite forgettable, but overall probably would recommend. Best of the Movies by Lynn Painter was so cute. A very nice, fun YA rom-com. I give this a 4 stars. Also would recommend. The House in the Cerulean Sea. This is my first TJ Klune book and I adored it. 5 stars. Definitely recommend. Such a cute, wholesome, cozy fantasy. Disfigured by Amanda LeDuc. This is a non-fiction about fairy tales and disability, but I just didn't like the way it was written and all of the kind of mismatching and like lack of editing within the book, I think. So I gave this a 2.75. Probably wouldn't recommend. It Happened One Summer. I gave this a 3.75, but this is really like a 4 star. I did really enjoy this book. I thought it's a really fun romance and so far the only Tessa Bailey book that I've actually enjoyed, so I would recommend this one. Wrong Place, Wrong Time. One of my favourite thrillers slash mysteries of all time. This is incredible. 5 stars. Adored this one. The Book of Cold Cases by Simone St. James. This was fun. I give it a 3.5. Probably would recommend, but like there's definitely like better books of this genre available if you are interested in that type of thing. Then I read The Bullet That Missed by Richard Osmond. I love this one as well. I gave this a 4.5. Again, highly recommend. A Flicker in the Dark by Stacey Willingham. I had very high expectations for this and unfortunately it just didn't hit. I found this so predictable, like almost more so than like any other thriller book that I've read. I give this a 3.5, which I think was potentially generous, but yeah, unfortunately I probably wouldn't recommend this one, although it is quite well loved, so maybe you'll enjoy it where I didn't. The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley. This was also a 3.5, probably more true to a 3.5. This was okay. I did enjoy the middle twist, but like overall it's not my favourite thriller I've ever read, so I mean maybe recommend, but like not particularly like it's middle, I guess. The Made by Nita Prose, I gave this a 3.75, but I actually really didn't enjoy this one all that much, so I probably wouldn't recommend it. The Infinity Between Us by N.S. Perkins, I really enjoyed this when I read it. I gave it a 4 stars. Can't remember it at all, but it's like a fun, just like kind of summer, beach, childhood friends to strangers to lovers romance, so probably would recommend. Then we have Magnolia Parks, 5 stars, definitely would recommend, one of my favourite series of the year. Then moving on to April, I read Daisy Hates, the second book in the Magnolia Parks series, 5 stars, obviously would recommend. Then Magnolia Parks The Long Way Home, I gave this a 4.5, not my favourite in the series, but still would recommend. I then read The Tea Dragon Society by Kay O'Neill. I gave this a 4 star, very cute little wholesome graphic novel. If you're into graphic novels, I would recommend. I've learned that I'm really not particularly, but overall this was a cute one. I then read The Vegetarian by Han Kang, would not recommend. I gave it a 1 star, did not enjoy this at all. One of my least favourite books of the whole year. And then followed swiftly by one of my favourite books of the year, Daisy Hates, The Great Undoing. 5 stars, obviously would recommend. This is my favourite in the series. Then I read The Housemaid by Freida McFadden. I gave this a 3.5, definitely better than the sequel, but overall not a very good thriller, I don't think. Probably would recommend if you're just trying to get into this genre, but not if you've read for quite a lot of it. Then I read These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. I really enjoyed this one. I gave this a 4 stars. I definitely want to continue on with the series, so definitely would recommend. I read The Trees Grew Because I Bled There by Eric LaRocca. This is like a horror short story collection. I had a bit higher expectations for it, but overall it was fine. I give this a 3.5, probably would recommend if you're into kind of like, I guess, darker horror, but these aren't like overly dark. My favourite was the first one in here. I then read the 3 STEMinist novellas from Ali Hazelwood. I gave Under One Roof 2.5, Stuck With You 3.5, and Below Zero 3.75. Overall, these are not my favourite from her. I did not enjoy them all that much, so probably wouldn't recommend compared to her full-length novels. I then read The Giver by Lois Lowry. This was a 4 star. I definitely would recommend this one, but probably not the rest of the series. I read Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating by Christina Lauren, probably my least favourite Christina Lauren. I gave this a 3.25. It's still fun, but probably wouldn't recommend. You can find better romances out there. Then I read The Castaways by Lucy Clark. I haven't really heard anyone talk about this, but it's definitely a very fun thriller. I gave this a 4 stars, would recommend. It's like plane crash vibes, very creepy. Then moving on to May. The first book I read in May was How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix. Look at my signed copy, by the way. This is so cute. How adorable is that? I gave this one a 4.5. I very much enjoyed it. Probably my 3rd favourite Grady Hendrix. Yeah, definitely would recommend this one. I really enjoyed it. Then I read The Mysterious Case of the Alberton Angels. Such a fun mixed media murder mystery. I gave this one a 4.25. Definitely would recommend. This stat is getting precarious. Maybe more stable now. Should we go for another one, or should I just keep piling them on? Then I read The Heart Principle by Helen Huang. I didn't enjoy this one. 2.5 would not recommend. Our Wives Under the Sea. I love this cover, but did not enjoy the book. I gave this a 3.5. Probably wouldn't recommend, although a lot of people love it. Like, look at the cover. Just not for me. It was too slow in my opinion. Okay, I'm gonna leave her where she is now. She's very tall, and then move on to a second pile. I think is the best idea for that. So then I read Pine by Francine Toon. I gave this a 3 stars. Didn't really enjoy it. Probably wouldn't recommend. Happy Place by Emily Henry. 5 stars. Absolutely would recommend. One of my favourite books of the year. Adore it. Then I read Good Girl Complex by Elle Kennedy. A really bad romance, to be honest. 2 stars. Definitely wouldn't recommend. Illuminate by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. Such a fun, like, mixed media sci-fi. 4.5. I love this one. Can't wait to continue on the series. Would definitely recommend. Then I read Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan. Just not for me. 2 stars. I found it so slow and boring. Like, if you like lit fic maybe, but not for me. I would not recommend. I read Kim Jung Born 1982 by Cho Nam-joo. I gave this a 4.5. Absolutely adored this one. Really would highly recommend. And finally for May, I read The Hunting Party by Lucy Foley. This is my favourite Lucy Foley that I've read so far. I actually quite enjoyed it. 3.75. Would recommend for like a good classic solid thriller. Now moving on to June, I read The Roommate by Rosie Danan. I did enjoy this. This was like a solid romance. 3.25. There's definitely better out there, but if you're looking for like a palette cleanser, this is definitely a good way to go. Then I read Night Bitch by Rachel Yoda. I gave this a 3 stars, and I also unhauled it, but like I'm not too sure why. Like, it wasn't awful. I kind of regret unhauling it a little bit, but yeah, 3 stars. It was okay, just a little bit disappointing for me. Then I read Breast and Eggs, which I just didn't get. I didn't enjoy. At 1.5. Would not recommend either of those. The Travelling Cat Chronicles by Hiro Awakawa. I gave a 4 stars. I really enjoyed this one. Very sad, very emotional, but it was good. There's No Such Thing as an Easy Job by Kiko Sujimura. I gave this one a 3.75. Don't know if I would recommend it. It's like not memorable. It was just like fine. So yeah, iffy on that one. Then I read Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood. I gave this one a full 5 stars. I absolutely adore Ali Hazelwood's full-length novels. Love this one. I think it's her best yet, so definitely would highly recommend. Then I read Restore Me. I would recommend the whole Shatter Me series. I gave this one a 3.5. I definitely think it's one of the weaker ones, but overall I still love the story, love the romance, etc, etc. I also read Shadow Me, and I gave this one a 2 star. This was the worst novella I think that there has been, maybe, in this series. So I mean, I recommend reading it all, but like this one you could skip probably if you wanted to. Okay, unfortunately the piles are no more, as we saw. So moving on, finally for June I read Laura Dean Keeps Breaking Up With Me by Mariko Tamaki and Rosemary Valerio O'Connell. I've never seen that name at the bottom, so I've just been saying it's by one author. I gave this a 4 stars. This is a very cute graphic novel. I really like the colour scheme in here, very cute. Oh, then in June I also read A Mysterious Affair at Styles by Agatha Christie. I gave this a 3 star, probably not my favourite mystery that I've read. And then for July I read The Housemaid's Secret by Frida McFarlane, 2.5. This was not very good. I would not recommend this one. I don't think it needs to be a series at all. Then I read Cultish by Amanda Montell. Gave this a 4.25, would definitely recommend. Very interesting non-fiction. I also read The True Love Experiment by Christina Lauren, my favourite by them so far. I gave this a 4.5 and really enjoyed this one, would definitely recommend. I read the last 2 books in the Forward collection that I personally hadn't read yet. I read Summer Frost by Blake Crouch and The Last Conversation by Paul Tremblay. Would recommend both of these. I gave them both a 4 star, very solid. Then I read the Tea Dragon Festival and the Tea Dragon Tapestry. I gave these a 3.5 and 3.75. Very cute, nice little graphic novels, would recommend if you're into that. I then read The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. I gave this a 4.5. Highly recommend this one. I absolutely love it. I'm thinking about it all the time. It goes kooky at the end, it goes a bit crazy, so definitely be prepared for that. And yeah, overall I did enjoy this one, would definitely recommend it. Then I read Twisted Hate by Anna Huang. Did not like this at all. It was not good. 2.25, not for me. And I also read Ghosted by J.M. Darhower. I gave this one a 4 stars. I really did enjoy this one. I thought this was great. Loved it. Then I read Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldry. This was so cute. I gave this a 4.25. Love this one and I can't wait to read the sequel. Would definitely recommend. Then I read Mooncakes by Suzanne Walker. Probably my least favourite graphic novel that I've read. I gave this a 3.75. I recommend, but like very forgettable. I literally can't remember any of it, I think, anymore. Then I read Horror Store. I love this one. Potentially my favourite from Brady Hendricks. This is a 5 star from me. I absolutely loved it and really would recommend. It's set out like an IKEA manual. I just love it. So camp, so fun. I love it. Then I read Hook, Line and Sinker by Tessa Bailey. I gave this a 3 stars. Didn't enjoy it very much. Didn't like Fox. Didn't think it needed a sequel. Then I read Gathering Blue, 3.5. This is the second book in the Giver series. As I mentioned before, I don't think this needs to be a series. Probably wouldn't recommend either of those. Then The Messenger, which is the third in the Giver series, 2.5. I didn't enjoy it at all. Would not recommend. Atomic Habits was good. I gave this a 4 stars. Like a solid little self-help book. Very famous. I feel like a lot of the ideas in here are like well known now, but I believe they were like created from this book. So overall would recommend. It's a good non-fiction. Then I read Beartown, which is one of my favourite books of the year. I absolutely adore this one. This is such an amazing book. Highly recommend. I love it to pieces. And then I finished off July with The Wedding Crasher by Mia Sosa. This was definitely really pleasantly surprising. I gave this one a 4 star and definitely would recommend. I loved it. So for August I started off with Dating Dr. Dill by Nisha Sharma and did not enjoy this at all. This was in my worst books video. I gave this a 2.5. Definitely wouldn't recommend. Very cringy. And then I read All the Dangerous Things by Stacey Willingham. I gave this a 3.75. Definitely better in my opinion than Flicker in the Dark, wherever that's ended up, but still not an incredible thriller, but I probably would recommend this more than Flicker in the Dark, I guess. Then I read Gallant by Beauty Schwab. I kind of blanked this from my memory, I can't lie. I gave it a 3 stars, but I probably would recommend it if you are interested in that type of thing. Then I read The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. I gave this one a 4 stars. Solid YA mystery. I'm excited to get into the rest of the series, so definitely will be continuing on with this one. No complaints. Definitely would recommend. Then I read Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. I gave this one a 4.5. Definitely not like groundbreaking and incredible, but a really like good solid literary fiction book. I did enjoy it. Then I read A Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendricks. This is super popular from him, but not my personal favourite. I gave this a 3.75. It was definitely a little bit disappointing, but overall I still would recommend it. Then I read Love in the Time of Serial Killers by Alicia Thompson. This can definitely be skipped. It's a very like middle of the road average romance. like good palette cleanser but nothing crazy. I gave this a 2.5, probably wouldn't recommend. And then I read Everything I Never Told You by Celeste Ng. I gave this a 4.5, really enjoyed this one, definitely would recommend. Same goes for The Serpent and the Wings of Night, very different vibes, but I also gave it a 4.5 and would very much highly recommend it. And I finished off August with The Sanatorium by Sarah Pearce. I didn't enjoy this one at all. It's not a very good thriller in my opinion. I gave it 2 stars. You can avoid it, would not recommend. So then going into September, I started off with Murder in the Family by Cara Hunter. I adored this one, another mixed media murder mystery, and yeah, I thought it was great. I did predict the ending from about like maybe here, but overall 5 stars, definitely would recommend. It's so much fun, a really good book. And then I read The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. I gave this a 4.5, loved it, really good, solid romance, and definitely would recommend. And then I read Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. We were like surrounded by good romance this month. I gave this a 5 stars, would absolutely recommend. One of my favourite romances of all time. I absolutely adored it. And then I read Mr. Magic by Kirsten White. This one's a little bit kooky, a little bit weird. It's like pure vibes, but I do really want to read it again. I would recommend it. It's a 4-star, solid little weird kind of creepy horror atmospheric book. So I definitely want to give it another go. Not that I need to, but just like I want to reread it. Then I read Thank You for Listening by Julia Wayland. This was such a little solid like audiobook themed romance. I read it as an audiobook, and Julia Wayland is one of my favourite audiobook narrators, so I had a great time with it. I gave this a 3.75, would definitely recommend. Then I read Sleeping Giants by Sylvain Neuvel. This is a really cool sci-fi, again a little bit mixed media in terms of like told through interview transcripts. I gave this a 4 stars, very solid. I really want to continue on with the series, so would recommend. And then I read like the 2 kind of bonus short stories, file number 2 and file number 247 from the Themis files. I probably wouldn't necessarily recommend these. I gave them both 3 stars. They weren't necessary to the story. Sorry if the angle changed slightly, I just had to change my memory card because we ran out of storage. But yeah, they're just fun little kind of extra books, like not essential to the story, but just like a fun little read. Then I read Funny You Should Ask by Lisa Sussman. I gave this a 4.75 and really loved it. I thought this was an excellent romance book, and Lisa Sussman is one of my favourite romance authors, so highly recommend that one. Then I read Unlikable Female Characters. This was a solid like non-fiction. I gave this a 3.75, would definitely probably recommend. I also read Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Alderton. On holiday, as you can tell, she's beaten up, but I gave this a 4.75. I really love this memoir. It was in my honourable mentions of the year, I believe, so would highly recommend this one. Then I read No Exit by Taylor Adams. This was good. I definitely had a bit higher expectations for it, and I was slightly disappointed, but I gave it a 4 stars. It's definitely a solid, very suspenseful thriller, so I would recommend it. Overall, I did think it was pretty good. Then I read The Only Living Girl on Earth. I believe this was like a Scribd/Everand original. It was just a really short, like little novella. I gave this a 3.5. It was fine. I probably wouldn't recommend. You don't like need to read it. It was just like to fill time. So then for October, I started off with Found by Erin Kinsley. I gave this one a 3.75. Overall, it's not my thing. If you like kind of police, crime, detective, procedural things, maybe I'd recommend it, but overall probably not. Then I read Vicious by V.E. Schwab. I gave this one a 4.25. Absolutely adored this. Really liked it and really want to continue on with the series, so would highly recommend. Then I read another favourite of the year, which was If We Were Villains by ML Rio. Would highly recommend. I adore this one. I give it a 5 stars. Just the vibes, everything were like immaculate in here. Then I read Emma by Jane Austen. I gave this a 3.75 for like my actual enjoyment of the book, but the story, I really like the new movie. Like it's overall like probably a 4.25 story for me, if that makes sense. Obviously I recommend it. It's like a classic. I'm not gonna sit here and be like, no, I don't think you should read Jane Austen. It was really good. I did enjoy it. Then I read my favourite book of the year, The Last Novel to Die by Richard Osmond, the 4th in the Thursday Murder Club series, and arguably the best. I gave this one a full 5 stars. Absolutely recommend, obviously, as well as the whole rest of the series. Then I read The Ex-Hex by Erin Sterling. I gave this a 3.5. Would recommend if it's like October. Probably not if it's any other time of year. Like it's not essential reading, but it's fine. Just like an easy witchy romance, I guess, but there's probably a lot better out there. Then I read Once More with Feeling by Lisa Sussman. I gave this one a 5 stars. This is a little bit like unpopular, but I adore this one. Would highly recommend it, especially if you ever read like fan fiction, celebrity fan fiction, that type of thing. Like I think you will eat this up. I loved it. And then we were just like overwhelmed with 5 stars in October. I read Babel by R.F. Kuang, an incredible book, 5 stars obviously. I absolutely recommend this one. It's like a masterpiece of literature, like modern classic in the making. Absolutely adored it. Highly recommend. Then I read Six Scorched Roses by Carissa Broadbent. This is the novella between the Crowns of Nyaxia books, and I love this one as well. This was a 4 stars, so I would highly recommend. You can even read it separate to the rest of the series if you really want to. Then I read My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix. I will always recommend Grady Hendrix, but this is my personal least favourite from him. I gave it a 3.5. So yeah, would recommend, but like if you like the others that I liked, you wouldn't like this as much. But if you like Southern Book Club, you will like this one as well, if that makes sense. Then I read The Shining. I hated The Shining, would not recommend. 1 star. I thought it was absolutely boring, drivel, horrendous. Like, I was not a fan of The Shining. Clearly, if you've been on this channel, you know there's beef there. Then I read Notes on an Execution by Daniel Kafka. This was excellent. A really solid, like, thriller-ish, mystery-ish literary book. I gave this a 4.5. Loved it. Really solid. Probably should have made it into my honorable mentions, maybe. I'm not sure, but I did really enjoy it. Then I read Ankle Snatcher by Grady Hendrix. This was like a little short story that he did, like an Amazon original one. I give this a 3.5. It was fine, like 29 pages. Probably wouldn't recommend. It's not like necessary, but like overall it was fine. Then I read Akatar by Sarah J Maas. I gave this one a 4.25. Would recommend. I'm excited to get into the rest of the series. Obviously I'm not going to sit here, given how popular it is, not recommend it. Then I read The Inmate by Frida McFadden. This is a 3 stars. Not a very good thriller, to be honest, but like easy to read, so probably wouldn't recommend. Then The Three Dahlias by Katie Watson. This was such a fun little mystery. I gave this one a 4 stars. Super solid, like no complaints. Yeah, it's just a fun mystery, so definitely would recommend that one as well. Then I read His and Hers by Alice Feeney. Similar to Frida McFadden, 2.5. Didn't really love it. It was weird and like kind of very dark for no reason, so would not recommend this one. Then moving on to November, I started off with Death and Croissants by Ian Moore. This is like a fun little cozy mystery. Like, it's nothing special. It's definitely not my favorite from the genre, but if you're looking for something easy, I know this is like quite a quick audiobook, like I would recommend, but like overall there are better if you're looking for like a solid cozy mystery. Then I read The Maze Runner by James Dashner. Obviously recommend. It's The Maze Runner. I didn't like it as much as the movies and also as much as when I first read it, but overall a solid 4 star. Like, you can't really go wrong. Then I read Get Alive, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert. 4 stars. This was such a cute little fun romance. Like, no complaints really. It was great, so I definitely would recommend it. Then I read Defy Me by Tahira Mafi, the next book in the Shatter Me series, number 5, I believe, if we're not including novellas. 4 stars, definitely more solid than the other ones. I'm excited to close out the series soon. I would recommend the whole series, but definitely the first 3 are the best 3. Then I read The First to Die at the End. This was a 3.75, but overall I probably wouldn't recommend. Like, it was just fine. I don't think it needed to occur and be made, but like it was fine if you really loved the first one maybe, but if you were like just impartial to it, then you can probably skip it. Then I read Reveal Me. This is just the bind up of the one I mentioned earlier and Reveal Me. I give this a 4 star. This is definitely one of the more strong novellas in the series, so yeah, would recommend. Obviously I recommend like the whole series. Then I read Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. I gave this a 4.75, but like low-key it should be a 5 star. I absolutely love this one, so would highly recommend. Then I read Frozen Charlotte by Alex Bell. I did not enjoy this one. 2.5. Not a recommendation from me. Then I read One of Us Is Next by Karen M. McManus. 3.75. If you're looking for like an easy YA mystery, I definitely think the One of Us Is Lying trilogy is worthwhile, worth your time, so I would recommend, but like compared to like adult mysteries, it's not the best. Then I read Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune. Such a lovely book. 4.5. I really enjoyed this one as well, so would highly recommend. Then I read My Heart Is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. This is a 2.5. I just did not like the character and like narrative voice in this and just found it a bit weird, so I gave it a 2.5. I did not enjoy it. Then I read Sun by Lois Lowry. Again, not a necessary book with the Giver series. 2.75. You can definitely skip it. And then I read Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers. I loved it. It was so cute. 4.5. Highly recommend. Then I read Alice by Christina Henry. This is the first in a trilogy. It's like a dark retelling. I gave this one a 3.75 and really loved it. It was so solid. I'm running through my November ones pretty quickly because I did do a full November wrap up, which you can see on my channel. Then I read Anxious People. I love this one as well. I give this a 4.5. Frederick Backman is just like an incredible author. I absolutely adore him. So yeah, this was incredible. Highly recommend. And I also really highly recommend Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone by Benjamin Stevenson. This is an excellent kind of a little bit meta, like very funny mystery book, and I can't wait for the rest of the series. Highly recommend. 4.25 for that one. And then moving on to December. So I don't have a full December wrap up. I was going to do one and then I ran out of time, so I'm probably going to talk a little bit longer about these ones. But firstly, I read Homecoming. These are all for my Goodreads video. This was a 3.5. Definitely very solid. I did enjoy it. It was a little bit long, definitely not mystery thriller, but overall it was solid. The Only One Left by Riley Sager, I gave a 4 stars. Again, a really fun thriller. I do like Riley Sager. I definitely think this is a solid book and really enjoyed it. Then I read I Have Some Questions for You by Rebecca Mackay. This is not super popular, but I absolutely adored it. I think it was really good. I gave it a 3.75, so I would actually really recommend this one. It's kind of like dark, not dark academia actually, but like kind of like more literary crime, I guess, rather than like solid thriller mystery. Then I read Bright Young Women, my second favourite book of the year. I absolutely recommend this one wholeheartedly 5 stars. This is such a beautiful story. I'm like absolutely obsessed with it. Like I can't wait to reread it. So incredible. Please, I beg you, one recommendation for this video, take it away and read this one because like it's so criminally underrated. I adore it. Then I read None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell, which I personally think is a little bit overrated. Overall, I didn't enjoy it. I know there's meant to be like an ambiguous ending, but I felt like that didn't really work. Like I feel like there's one route that's a bit more obviously true, and overall I didn't like it. Certain things in here were handled really weirdly as well. Like if you've read the book, you know, like it's just weird. Like I didn't really like it. Not like weird in a fun way, weird in just a weird way. And I ended up giving this a 3 star. Then I read All the Sinners Bleed, also for my Goodreads video. I gave this one a 2.75. I just don't like police procedural books. They're just not for me. So unfortunately I didn't enjoy this one very much. But like objectively, I can see that it is a good written book. Then I read Honey and Spice by Bolly Babalola, and I gave this one a 4 stars. This definitely really exceeded my expectations and pleasantly surprised me. I do think that we had a public declaration of love in here. I hate that, but like overall it was fun. The banter was good. I really liked that between characters, and overall yeah, it was a solid romance. So I gave this one a 4 stars. I definitely would recommend that one. Then I read Circe by Madeline Miller, and it changed my life a little bit. Like I love this book. I gave it a 4.25, but we could potentially raise it. I'm like in my Greek mythology era now. Like I'm just like obsessed with it. I love it, love the vibes, love the retelling, so would highly recommend this one. Then I read The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston. I give this one a 4 stars. Solid romance book, not quite as good as The 7-Year Slip, but still really fun and a little bit of something different, I think, which I really do appreciate in romance, because as a genre, romance and crime can get incredibly repetitive, so I'm really like seeing something a little bit different in there. Then I read The Christmas Appeal by Janice Hallett. This was such a fun little cozy mystery, again also mixed media, and I gave this a 4.25. I really would recommend it. You do actually have to read the first one because it does spoil it a little bit, but I think they're both worthwhile reading, and yeah, I actually prefer this one to the first one because I feel like the first one had a little bit of a pacing issue, only minor, and this one was resolved because it was so short. So yeah, love that one. Then I read All I Want for Christmas. This is kind of one of the generic romances that I kind of don't love. The communication was horrible. They broke up and got back together before they were even together. Okay, we had a short intermission to charge up my camera battery, but I'm back, and I think what I was saying is that just like I didn't root for the couple in here. I didn't find them likable. It just seemed like so stupid, so I did not have fun with this one, unfortunately, and it was a 2.5. Then I read This Is How You Lose a Time War by Amal El Motar and Maxa Gladstone. Unfortunately, this just like didn't hit the way I think it did for other people. Very lyrical, beautiful writing. I gave this a 3.5. I probably would recommend if you like that type of writing, but if not, then you might not enjoy it that much. Then I read Life Ceremony by Sarika Murata. Unfortunately, this felt a bit flat for me. I gave this a 2.5 and probably wouldn't recommend. I do like her other books, but these short stories all felt a little bit underdeveloped for me personally. Then I read Q by Christina Doucher. I actually really enjoyed this one. It definitely was a super fun dystopian, and I give it a 4 stars, would recommend. Then I read Dream On by Angie Hockman, a nice palate cleanser romance. Again, I think there's better out there. It's definitely better than All I Want for Christmas, but maybe not quite as good as Love in the Time of Serial Killers, maybe. I'm not too sure, but I gave this one a 2.75. Then I read Daisy Jones and the Six. I really love this one. I love like the interview style, and I gave this one a 4.5. Highly recommend. I think Taylor Jenkins Reid is incredible. Then I read Medusa by Jessie Burton. This was excellent, a really nice little shorter book about Medusa's story, which I didn't know in full before. I gave this one a 3.75. I definitely would recommend it. And then my last book of the year, I read In the Lives of Puppets by TJ Klune, which was a 5 star. I was so happy to finish the year on such a good book. I would highly recommend this one. I thought it was absolutely excellent. I really enjoyed it. So yeah, 5 stars for this one. I loved it, would highly recommend. So that is all my books gone through, everything I read last year and whether I would recommend them to you guys. So yeah, here we are. Okay, so now we have run through all of the books I read this year. I do want to take a little moment to kind of reflect on my reading and also kind of make some goals for next year. So overall, I'm really happy with the books that I read. I think I got an excellent amount read. I had some real kind of diversity here. I definitely branched out a little bit, like a little bit more into fantasy, dark academia, like horror and stuff, I definitely branched out to more so. And yeah, I definitely like to continue to diversify my reading next year. I definitely feel like I'm going to be reading a lot more fantasy because I'm quite enjoying that genre at the moment. And yeah, overall I'm feeling pretty positive. I feel like we had a lot of good books here. I feel like overall I probably recommended more to you guys than I didn't recommend, which was fab. I vlogged almost all of these and I do want to continue next year vlogging all my reads. I just find that so much fun and I like to create like themed reading vlogs and stuff. So a couple of goals for this year. I definitely want to try and read more classics and more non-fiction. I think I said 5 classics and 12 non-fiction books. I also want to be able to kind of cull my physical TBR. So for the first 3 months of the year I'm going to be on a book buying ban, like completely pretty much no books whatsoever. And then the second 3 months of the year, so from like April, May, June, I'm going to be on like a kind of low buy for books, I guess. So I'll be able to buy continuations in series, books for specific videos and 2023 releases. I'm not be including any pre-orders that I've already made in this like book buying ban, but that's just what I'm going to be doing, and that is to hopefully cull down my physical TBR. At the start of the year I believe I had over 180 books on my physical TBR, which for me is too many. I'm running out of space like drastically. All this whole shelf behind me is unread books. I've got more unread books up there. I just want to create some space and not be overrun with books. So yeah, I really do want to like actually read the books that I have. I want to read 100 books off my physical TBR this year if I can, so we'll see. I'd like to get my physical TBR just below 100 whatsoever, but I know I will be buying more books towards the end of the year at least, and like throughout the year I do like doing book hauls and buying books, so I will be continuing to do that. But yeah, I just like to get the number below 100 would be kind of the main goal, I guess. So yeah, that is one. I want to finish as many series as possible. I believe I'm currently in the middle of 24. I'd love to get that down to maybe 15 or so, we'll see. Those are kind of my general goals. And yeah, I want to DNF more as well. I do want to be able to actually put down a book if I'm not enjoying it. Don't force myself to read it. I DNF'd 2 books last year, very big for me, and I'm hoping this year I will do more. And it's only going to be ones that I'm finding really boring and like struggling to read. And so yeah, not being scared to DNF books if they're like in specific vlogs and stuff. So yeah, overall there's just my chill reading goals. I just want to continue to have fun with it, grow this channel, post more videos, etc, etc. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. If you have read any of these, let me know your thoughts. I mean, you've probably read one of them. There's like 163 here I believe, so quite a few. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this video don't forget to give it a like down below, hit subscribe and turn the bell to join a little club. It makes you turn on all notifications, then you'll be notified every single time I post a new video. And if you want to watch one of my other videos, there'll be 2 on the screen I have to pick from, as well as a link linked up in the cards from earlier. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.